We're thrilled to be here with all of you today to discuss the critical issues that our region faces and to explore innovative solutions to economic development and promoting diversity in the region as well. In that light, I have the honor of introducing a dynamic leader who's been at the forefront of advancing economic development and social justice in our community. He's a visionary, a strategic thinker, and beyond that, he's a champion of equity and inclusion. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a very warm welcome to the President and CEO of the Urban League of Greater Madison, Dr. Ruben Anthony Jr., everyone.
Man, that's going to be your job forever. You did such a good job. Yeah. Well, good morning. I'm Ruben Anthony, the President and CEO of the Urban League of Greater Madison. It's good to see you today. It feels like it's been a long time that we've seen some of you. Last year, we returned back to doing in person this event. And today, as I've met some of you coming in, you're like, well, is this the first time that we've done it since COVID? No, it's not. We had a smaller audience last year, so we're so thankful that many of you have come out today. You know, this is the 10th annual Madison Regional Economic Development and Diversity Summit, and it's been really good for this region. So let's give our staff and all of you a round of applause. This partnership with MadREP has lasted for more than a decade and fills me with pride and gratitude for all that we have accomplished. It is truly an honor to collaborate with our friends at MadREP once again. It is amazing to realize that our teams at MadREP and the Urban League had the foresight and the understanding to highlight the intersectionality of equity and economic development. We started doing this long before it became the thing to do, the in thing. Watching the rest of the country find their way to this place validates that not only were we moving in the right direction here, but we have been innovators and leading the way, and you have been in partnership with us from day one, so we're very thankful for that. Thanks to all of you for being the kind of partners who don't just talk a good game, but you practice. The past 3 years have shed an added light on how diversity and economic development not only intersects, but collide. Whether it was brown and black people having limited access to capital on the negative side, or Madison's companies showing extraordinary financial support of BIPOC-led and BIPOC-serving organizations. A collision has occurred, and it is essential that we examine community impacts through this collective lens. During these challenged times, the Urban League of Greater Madison has experienced firsthand exceptional support for the development of the Black Business Hub, where diversity and economic development will meet on a regular basis. And we are very grateful for the widespread support that we have experienced from many of you in this room. Last week, I was in New Orleans at a conference with around 70 Urban League affiliate CEOs, and many of them were saying the support that has been shown during the triple pandemic has waned, if not ended. That's unfortunate, because I can tell you that during COVID and the Black Lives Matter movement, we didn't stop serving this community. And we're still serving today. We appeal to you all for continued support beyond this difficult period or this crisis that we faced. With our Black Business Hub, We will bring together more economic support under one roof than any other facility in the state. We have when I pause like that, would y'all clap? All right. All right. The Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation will be in the hub. The Summit Credit Union will be in the hub. The Madison Black Chamber of Commerce will be in the hub. Forward Community Investments will be in the hub. The Women's Business Initiative Center, WIBIC, will be in the hub. Climb USA will be in the hub. The Urban League Accelerator Program in partnership with Generator and many more partnerships will be in the hub. All right, y'all got it. We are leading a renaissance in South Madison, a revitalization that will change the physical landscape there and the economic landscape for small businesses in this region. But we need your ongoing support, and I know that we can count on you. Don't get quiet on me now. I'd like to pause and thank our planning team for all the time and energy they put into researching and finding exceptional thought leaders like the ones we bring to you today. Each year, we see increased competition for the caliber of speakers you've come to expect from us. So please give our teams who put this together a round of applause. As you know, in the MadREP region, we have been preaching about the value between diversity and economic development for a very long time. I am looking for a discussion today about how we can better recruit diverse talent, foster more welcoming and successful environments for diverse talent, with the goal of having the most economically successful and equitable region in the state. Your presence here today is a testament to your commitment to bettering our community. I'm excited to spend the day with you participating in meaningful and sometimes difficult conversations about economic equity, hiring disparities, and what we are doing to make the Madison region the best place to live, work, and play for all of us. Now, one of the greatest parts of doing this conference is that I get to do it with my friend, Jason Fields. I've watched him navigate a very brilliant career, and he was an exceptional legislator and community leader who has always been able to get things done. No matter who is in the leadership, Democrats or Republican, he has found a way to get things done. He is likable and as cunning as a fox. After leaving a recent meeting with Jason, I had to ask myself, now what did I just agree to? and I said to myself when I got back to the office, I wouldn't have given this deal to nobody else, but somehow Jason squeezed it out of me. Together, I know we are going to continue working to maintain the fastest and strongest economic region in the state. Now, it is with great pleasure on the 10th anniversary of this event to introduce you to my good friend and colleague, Jason Fields, the president and CEO of MadREP.
All right. Thank you, Ruben. I call Ruben Doc. He's like a big brother. You all think that was a joke, but he really did tell me that he wouldn't do this deal for anybody else. So, you know, one of the things I love about working with Dr. Anthony is he is a big brother, a mentor, and quite honestly, a dear friend. I mean, I could listen to, again, I call him Doc all day long. And when you see us out, you will often hear me refer to him as the blueprint. And that is basically the work he did while at the Department of Transportation in helping minority businesses get contracts with the federal government. We still haven't seen anything like that today. So, Doc, as a big brother, a mentor, a dear friend, it's always a pleasure to be with you on stage. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm also proud to have this partnership between our two organizations, and honestly, I'm proud of all of you. It is the partnerships that we have with our business and civic community that make these events possible, especially Alliant Energy and UW Health, who, as you can see, are two of our major sponsors. As you can see from our program, we have a tremendous number of business and community partners. Hundreds of business and community leaders are registered to join us throughout the day. I'd like to invite you all, while you're sitting there, to take a moment and check out the amazing spread of event sponsors. Then as you go about your day, take time out to say thank you to those sponsors, because when you encounter those representatives, it's because of them that make these kinds of events possible. So thank you to all our sponsors. I'm gonna take a pause and just thank Ruben for getting you all to start clapping on cue, because had you not been doing that, this was gonna be a long day. So as you may already know, MadREP is the economic development agency for the 8-county Madison region of South Central Wisconsin. At its core, economic development is intentionally creating a vibrant economy that works for everyone. We work to secure the economic well-being and quality of life for our community by creating and retaining jobs, strategically cultivating our workforce, and providing a stable tax base. How do we do this? Well, here are 3 major ways that we've undertaken in the last 2 years. MadREP distributed over $12 million in Main Street Bounce Back grants in collaboration with the state of Wisconsin to support filling the commercial vacancies created by the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you to my team, and especially Everett Monroe, who would just look at me and go, you know, you lucky I don't walk out of here. Last year, MadREP launched a crowdsourced speed test tool for Madison region to prepare for new FCC maps. Wisconsinites were then able to use the tool to collect real-time data before submitting corrections to the FCC's new national broadband maps in January. The reason why that's important is if we don't know who has broadband or we know where it's at, then we continue to be plagued by affordability, people not having it in rural and urban areas. And after announcing a van pool pilot in partnership with Commute with Enterprise in March of 2022, MadREP collaborated with Competitive Wisconsin and Black Hawk Tech on a Transportation Accelerator event in November. We're pleased to have 3 van pools on the road supporting rural worker transit, and we look forward to adding more soon. We have an amazing program today with distinguished local and national speakers and compelling topics, including rejuvenating Midwestern communities by investing in better quality of life, embracing neurodiversity in the workplace, pathways from youth to adult apprenticeship, and what is talent really looking for. Again, thank you all for gathering with us today. Our teams work very hard every year to bring you dynamic speakers and discussions to further all of our understanding on how diversity, equity, inclusion, and economic development go hand in hand. Let me make this plea before I turn it over to my board chair. One of the things that I find I'm very passionate about is these events are great. And if you follow me and Ruben, we like to have what we call receipts, meaning enough talk, let's do the work. So I'm going to encourage you all, after today, find a way to get involved if you're not already involved. And if you are involved, do more. Get involved with the Urban League, get involved with MadREP, and let's produce and walk away with receipts after this event. Now I would like to turn it over to Peter Tan, MadREP's board chair, as well as executive vice president and chief design officer at Strang, an architecture firm founded here in Madison in 1935 and a gold sponsor of this event. You can see their exceptional work throughout Madison and beyond at locations like University Research Park, UW-Madison, and Iowa State University. Where is the board chairman, Peter? So my team told me don't cry like you did last year when you talked about Julie as the board chairman. But, you know, I'm a big emotional, sentimental, well-dressed guy. Peter, come on up. I enjoy working with MadREP, and I enjoy our board chairs. And I say this kind of stuff willingly. I don't blow smoke. But I have loved working with Peter, and he has been very, very detailed-oriented. And it has made me better. And so to my friend Peter Tan, thank you for the work that you're doing with MadREP, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thanks, Jason. Well, a warm welcome to all of you. It is so great to be here today with all of you. Firstly, I want to give a big thank you to our sponsors for your generous support and passion for this summit. Without you, all this will not be possible. Thank you to MadREP's talented board for your wisdom in guiding MadREP. I'm honored to serve with you to bring our region forward. Will the board members of MadREP please stand just to be recognized? And thank you to Jason, our CEO and president, and our awesome staff at MadREP. Will the staff at MadREP please stand and raise your hands? We are so grateful and lucky to have such an awesome staff that just carries our mission forward. And then our terrific partners at the Urban League for your dedicated work in working with us to pull all this together. Thank you. So over the years of my involvement in MadREP, I've grown to really appreciate our forward-looking approach to the economic development of our 8-county community. Attracting and retaining talent and businesses in our community requires paying attention to all the factors that contribute to helping them thrive and making this a great place to live. I love that MadREP takes a holistic and regional approach to our region's economic development, uniquely addressing both the urban and rural areas, workforce development, housing, mentoring of middle and high school students, broadband access, transportation, childcare, attracting and retaining talent and businesses, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. So 10 years ago, research by the scientific community proved that a more diverse community or organization is more creative and innovative, and ultimately more successful and prosperous. And we mean diversity in the broadest sense of the word: cultural, race, ethnicity, religious, age, gender, disability, neurodiversity, urban and rural, to name a few. So it's a no-brainer then that our annual summit should integrate economic development and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we were one of the first in the country to do so. So the rest is history. We are thrilled that today we are celebrating our 10th year of a partnership between MadREP and the Urban League in bringing you this Economic Development and Diversity Summit. So as I address you all today, I wear two hats. Okay, I'm the board chair of MadREP, but I'm also the Chief Design Officer at Strang, an architecture, engineering, interior design, and planning firm that is a passionate supporter of MadREP and its mission and this year's summit. I'd like to share with you why I'm personally so excited about what we are going to discuss and learn today. So as a design firm, the celebration of diversity is key to Strang's creative process. We bring together diverse voices to collaborate, think outside the box, and create innovative designs. As Chief Design Officer, I champion the notion that every member of our interdisciplinary team is a designer in their own right, that no one has a monopoly on good ideas. In our collaborative design process, we look forward to those times where we identify our blind spots and our biases, and we love those aha moments that bring us new and better ways of doing things. So, as a design firm, diversity, equity, and inclusion is strength's competitive edge. And so in the same vein, as a region, in terms of our economic development, diversity, equity, and inclusion is our community's competitive edge. So diversity, equity, and inclusion is not only the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. So my dream is that we move from a place where we feel that diversity is something we have to do to a place where we embrace it as a beautiful thing that we celebrate. So we have a great program lined up today, and I'm looking forward to learning with all of you how we can come together to celebrate the diverse voices in our community. This is our opportunity to make connections and to discover the passions and projects that are already happening in our community. So let's take the opportunity now to partner and generate actionable plans to create a more equitable, inclusive, just, and resilient region where everyone can prosper. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for that great message. Let's give him another round of applause. You know, I am blessed to have served with the Urban League for 8 years, and it's one of the best jobs that I've had. What makes a job good is having a good boss. You know, when you have a good boss, you can come to work and know that you've got the support. I want to introduce our board chair, Beth Prestine. Beth will be listed among one of the best board chairs that we've ever had at the Urban League. Whatever we need, we can count on her. Whether we need her subject matter expertise of banking, or for simply her to show up at an event and represent the board, we can always count on her. It is my esteemed honor to introduce Beth Curley Prestine, the Urban League of Greater Madison Board Chair and Private Banking Relationship Manager at U.S. Bank. Please give her a round of applause.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm excited to be here today representing the Urban League Board of Directors. I want to take a moment to thank this amazing group of volunteers who work so hard to advance the Urban League mission. Not only have they supported the Urban League's critical youth development, workforce development, community engagement programs over the last few years, they have also helped the organization launch new wealth-building opportunities such as Homeownership 2.0 and the Black Business Hub. These programs are in response to what the community has told us that are critical needs. May I ask any Urban League of Greater Madison board members in the audience to please stand and be recognized? And I also want to thank our tireless leader, Dr. Ruben Anthony. His focus, thank you, sorry. I should have paused. His focus and vision keep me inspired to do my part to address the opportunity gaps that exist in our community. One thing many of you might not know is that his work is so highly regarded in the National Urban League movement that he has been leading the association of nearly 100 other Urban League presidents and CEOs over the last several years. Along with that, many other urban leagues across the country have begun to replicate some of the innovative program models that he has developed here. So congratulations also. I want to thank and congratulate Jason Fields and MadREP on celebrating 10 years of partnership and co-hosting this event with the Urban League. You and the entire MadREP organization have been strong advocates and educators in helping our community understand that closing the racial opportunity gaps is vital to the economic well-being of the region. Lastly, as others have, I want to thank each of you for being here today. We all recognize that Madison has much work to do to close the dramatic racial gaps in education, economics, health, and other quality of life factors. Your presence here today tells me that you share in the commitment to that work and gives me great optimism about what we can do together. I'm very much looking forward to our program today. I think we'll have great conversations and learn a lot. Next up, we have a special message from Tony Evers, 46th Governor of the state of Wisconsin.
Hey there, folks. Governor Tony Evers here. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you to the 2023 Madison Region Economic Development and Diversity Summit. Folks, we have a lot to celebrate this year. Wisconsin's unemployment rate is at a record low, and the state labor market participation rate is well above the national average. And this wasn't done by accident. We made strategic investments in our economy and our workforce and became the top state in the country for directing our federal recovery aid to small businesses and economic development. Many of those investments have supported economic growth here in the Madison area through programs like the Diverse Business Assistance and Investment Grants and the Main Street Bounce Back Program. And if we're going to keep up this economic momentum, we need to make bold and innovative investments in our workforce. Now, my biennial budget would have helped out to do just that. I propose investing nearly $500 million into programs to bring new workers to our communities, invest in new infrastructure, and ensure we can meet the needs of a 21st century economy. I also propose $50 million to invest in as many as 5,000 small businesses by continuing our very successful Main Street Bounce Back program, among so many other key priorities. While those proposals might have been removed from our budget for now, we have to keep working to support growing industries like clean energy and initiatives to recruit, train, and retain nurses and folks in our healthcare workforce, like the new nursing apprenticeship that was just launched at UW Health. We also know that to build a diverse, sustainable workforce here in Wisconsin, we must connect the dots that impact an individual's well-being and ability to be successful. That includes expanding access to child care, transportation, health care, and other strategic investments to reduce barriers for folks who want to join our workforce. You know as well as I do that a diverse workforce is vital to the greater Madison area and to our entire state. As you continue to find new ways to address evolving challenges, my administration is proud to be a partner in creating innovative programs, meeting folks where they are to get them the training to be successful, and building a diverse 21st century workforce and economy. So thank you for everything you do to support the Madison region's diverse and growing workforce, and have a great conference.
Well, definitely a big thanks to Governor Evers. He gave us $5 million for the hub project, and many of the things that we asked for, his team has certainly helped us do that. I want to pause for a minute and ask the Urban League staff that's in the room to stand up for a round of applause. Okay. We are going to introduce another video of Secretary Missy Hughes from the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. She couldn't be here today. I think she's out of the country. But as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, we are in strong partnership with the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. They will be in the Black Business Hub. They've also were one of the first to make a significant donation to the accelerator programs so that we can give grants, loans, and training to minority-owned businesses. Now a message from Missy Hughes, Secretary and CEO of the WEDC, Wisconsin-led Economic Development Organization.
Hi, I'm Missy Hughes, Secretary and CEO of the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. Thank you so much for this chance to celebrate 10 years of the Madison Region Economic Development and Diversity Summit. At WEDC, we are very excited about the collaborations and connections we're going to make as part of the Urban League's Black Business Hub on Madison's South Side. We are counting down the days to our planned move-in in August. WEDC is also supporting the Urban League of Greater Madison's Black Business Hub Accelerator Fund with a $400,000 Capital Catalyst grant. This fund will offer loans and grants and technical assistance to at least 40 startups and existing companies owned by people of color. At WEDC, we understand that historically some groups, women, people of color, the LGBTQ+ community, and others have not had access to the entrepreneurship education and financing needed to start businesses and build wealth. That's why WEDC has partnered with nonprofits statewide, working to ensure that everyone can access these entrepreneurship resources, whether living in a big city or a small town. Each year, WEDC funds key strategic partners across Wisconsin to help serve entrepreneurs and businesses. Many of these partners reach specific underserved audiences that WEDC might not otherwise be able to support. Examples of this include the First American Capital Corporation, which works to create and expand small and Native-owned businesses, the African American Chamber of Commerce of Wisconsin, which helps create and support diversely owned businesses across the state, and the Hmong Wisconsin Chamber of Commerce, which works to make capital accessible and offers technical assistance to Asian American owned businesses. One of the biggest challenges facing our economy right now is ensuring that Wisconsin attracts and retains a talented workforce. Wisconsin's workforce innovation grants are using federal dollars from the American Rescue Plan Act to fund a historic investment in the state's workforce. More than $128 million has been awarded to 27 local projects across the state working on removing barriers to work, whether it's transportation, housing, training, or childcare. Some of the workforce innovation grants specifically target reaching diverse or underserved populations, such as people of color, people with disabilities, or rural residents. In the Madison area, Operation Fresh Start has received up to $3.3 million for its Build Academy, which is literally changing the faces of the construction industry. Operation Fresh Start works with young people, including a significant number of people of color, to train them for family-sustaining jobs in the construction industry, which is currently a majority white. Across the state, the Down Syndrome Association of Wisconsin's Thinkability Wisconsin effort is using up to $9 million for training and services to help those with intellectual and developmental disabilities join the workforce. Long-term, the group is working to change perceptions of those with disabilities and create more opportunities. These are just two examples of the collaborations between nonprofits, government, and businesses that are making a difference to Wisconsin's economy and our communities. As you gather today in Madison, please think about the partnerships you can form with other businesses, nonprofits, local and state governments to strengthen our economy and make Wisconsin an even better place to live and work. And please know that WEDC will be here to support those partnerships and help you along the way. Welcome.
Thank you, Secretary Hughes. It is my honor to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Laura Dresser. Dr. Dresser is the Associate Director for the Center of Wisconsin Strategy, where she has worked for more than 2 decades. Her research and practice has focused on low-wage work and workforce development systems. She has analyzed the structure of low-wage jobs, written about ways to build stronger labor market systems, and worked extensively with labor, business, and community leaders to build them. A co-editor of The Gloves Off Economy, Workplace Standards at the Bottom of America's Labor Market, she is currently working issues of care work and the connection between quality care, quality jobs, and minimum wages. Today, she'll deliver the summit's annual Economy Overview session, and her presentation will focus on Wisconsin's economy and what it means for our workforce. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Laura Dresser.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, let's do that again. Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you all. It is really good to be in this space. It is great and inspiring to be hosted and welcomed by organizations that have done so much for this community. I'm really honored to be the economic kickoff, and I think it's smart. There's a tribute to the organizers of this that they managed to put The Economist right after the coffee. So, and also predictability, I know is really important. It's important that we keep this to 20 minutes, just so you know how long you're going to be listening to this. And I'm watching that too. So I'm talking about the state of working in Wisconsin, and especially focusing on, I'm sorry, I need to stay near the mic, especially focusing on questions of equity in the economy and what's going on in the economy. I have some themes. I'm going to, I tend to get a little too into my charts. Sorry. But I think I want to kind of really hit some themes about this moment and what's going on in this economy, and some of our I think some of the real opportunity in this moment that we should keep seizing and celebrating. And I want to focus a little bit on how that's happening and how it can. So that's, we do, at the end of this, and I'll share that this is shareable, so if anybody wants these slides, just contact the event organizers. Obviously, a lot of this stuff is up on the COWS website or on our Working Wisconsin website. Okay, so we're going to look back a little bit at the COVID crunch, the recovery from it, and we're going to, yes. I want to talk a little bit about some of the themes. Actually, Governor Evers mentioned, are we looking at a great resignation? And are we thinking about what's going on? Why is it so hard to find workers? I want to talk about that a little bit. I want to talk about wage trends, race and gender and education a little bit, and the two issues that I focus most on, and I know that for some of the businesses in this room, this is not central, but I think for many of the businesses this is in the room, and as a social policy priority, we really need to think about the structure of low-wage jobs and the inability to support kind of a sustainable life and the sort of structure that we have, especially in low-wage service jobs. And then a little bit on what to do going forward. Is a recession coming? Everybody wants to talk about that. I'm just going to throw a little on that. What's happening in the region and what are key sectors? I think that's kind of the structure of the day, what we'll be doing. So where we are on jobs, the next slide will show the trend in, So, you all know this. It's just a picture. You could look up there. And what it would tell you is unemployment is lower than it's been in a very long time. And jobs are back in the state to just barely where we were before the pandemic shutdowns, and at the national level a little above. So why is this important? I mean, first of all, the COVID shutdown was an intense contraction of the economy. Unlike even the 2008 Great Recession, many more jobs as a share of the total workforce shed over a month, right? Half of leisure and hospitality jobs lost in the state in a month. And then what we've had is a much more rapid recovery than we saw in the 2008 recession. And so, and you can see jobs are back and unemployment is down. I think this is a picture that everybody sort of knows. It's important to have in mind. Next picture. So what's going on? There is obviously a high demand for labor. Workers are working, and Wisconsin has the highest number of workers of all time this year. So I know many of you sort of there was a story about a year and a half ago that I feel like had this really long staying power, that was this Great Resignation story. And the Great Resignation suggested that the COVID relief was so generous, and workers were so inherently looking not to work, that everybody backed out of the labor market. And the reason that you can't find workers is that people aren't interested in working. This was sort of what got called the Great Resignation. This was not true. At the time, it is true that people were leaving jobs. They were leaving jobs for other jobs. They did not resign in the sense that that gave everyone an image like, oh, it's van life, GoFundMes, that's what we're doing. No. It was people who saw opportunity moving into new jobs. So there was, especially a year ago, a lot of labor market churn, but that was people taking the opportunity offered by high demand to move up in the labor market. That is what has happened in this labor market, and it is uncontestably great news. This labor market has allowed workers to move up and to close gaps in ways that no labor market has in the US. Even the late 1990s didn't have such impact on pulling the bottom of the labor market up. So right now today, the black unemployment rate at the national level is as low as it's ever been. Yes, it is still too high. Everything is relative to a horrible past, right? But it is, the gap between white and black unemployment is smaller than it has been. That has everything to do with the strength of this labor market. I think we moved straight from the Great Recession into a kind of lament about the labor market being too tight, that somehow this was a problem for the economy. It is a solution for workers. A tight labor market allows workers to negotiate. It gives them room to move up. So, this is my kind of summary version of that. This is another thing. I think unemployment rates, for many people, you think centrally about unemployed people. You think the unemployment rate goes down, that's good, fewer unemployed people. You think the unemployment rate goes up, that's bad, that's more unemployed people. That is a good first thing to think of. But the second thing you should think of when you see the unemployment rate change is the relative bargaining power of workers in their jobs, right? So when the line at the door is long, I do not ask for a second shift. I do not ask to stop being harassed by my supervisor. I do not ask for more wages or better hours because I know I'm replaceable. And when the line at the door is short, I have a little more room. Again, we have a decades restructuring of the relative power of employers and workers. And this has to do with unions and minimum wages and late regulation, all sorts of things that have pushed against. But this moment, workers have seen this power and they have leveraged this power. And you can see it in the wage trends and you can see it in the high demand. So I think the other thing that makes this moment unique is that many workers were told they were essential and then found themselves in a position of a little more power, feeling like, I'm not really treated like I'm essential here. Healthcare workers that literally in a pandemic don't get health insurance from the nursing homes or home health agencies they work in, called essential. Food service and grocery store workers who can't afford food, called essential. I think that crystallization of the importance of their work and the societal disregard for it, the impossibility of it, also gave workers something that they began to ask for. And this is why you see that the wage trends over the last 2 years, it is really the bottom of the labor force, the bottom of the labor market, the workers in food service and retail and the very lowest wage jobs demanding more and getting more for that work. And I think it's long overdue, needs to be more true. But I just worry that we have kind of gone straight from a like, oh my gosh, the economy shut down, and to a conversation like, oh my gosh, it's a problem that I can't find a worker. And I want you, and I know, because I also hire at the research center, and I'm challenged right now, for sure. But I want you to remember that in the background is a dynamic that is redistributing and closing gaps. And it is good news. This tight labor market is good news for the workers who are making something of it. So that's like theme one, obviously. Wisconsin is really working. Wisconsin works at higher rates than the national average. This is true in any time. We're have a bigger labor force now than we did in the past. So I think it's also just important to remember that objectively, a lot of people are working. And if we want to think about how to get more people working, we really have to pay attention to childcare and the other supports to getting people to work. Amen on the childcare. That supporting people into the labor force and doing the sorts of investments that were in the governor's budget are the way that you're going to expand this workforce. Making this state attractive and forward-looking is the way you're going to expand this workforce, not by vilifying people who are unemployed or double-checking whether they're applying for work, which won't increase this workforce. Okay, and then so where we are wages, this I like to just let you see. This is the median wage from 1979 to current. It's inflation adjusted, so it's in 2021 dollars. And you can see, I think the most important thing to see here, Wisconsin is the green line, US is yellow. Basically Wisconsin and the US moved together at the median. This is all workers. This is not just hourly workers. I think sometimes folks think that because I'm talking in hourly wages, I've left out all the salaried workers. No, all the salaried workers in the room, you're represented here by turning your salary into a wage with our average hours worked. So at the median, the person who is halfway from the lowest wage worker to the highest wage worker, that median worker earns $21 an hour. In Wisconsin, and that's, you can see even in 20 and 21, the way that that trend is up. That's stronger wage growth than even the late 90s, which was the last period of decent wage growth. And again, this is mostly equalizing wage growth because it is the advances are concentrated in the lowest wage sectors. And when the lowest wage sectors come up, inequality closes because that is where Black and brown workers and women are disproportionately located. You can see here the deep wage inequality of this state, and this is more of a 40-year story and an important one in this state than a COVID story. I think in 1979, the state of Wisconsin generated pretty good economic opportunity for especially Black workers. In the state of Wisconsin at that point, Black workers in the state made more than the national average. By 2021, as you all in this room know, that is not true. The state of Wisconsin by 2021-22 generates among the greatest disparity between Black and white outcomes of any state in the nation, right? But this is not always true. Manufacturing and union jobs in Milwaukee, Racine, the Lakeshore areas built a strong middle class in the 70s, Black middle class, that was decimated uniquely by the manufacturing restructuring of the 80s. But what you can see here, the other thing I kind of point out when you look at this, the 79 to 2021, and I know, especially y'all in the back, it's really hard to see these numbers. But basically in 1979, you have a men's economy and a women's economy, right? The men are all earning about $20 an hour, and the women are down 14, 15 or lower for Hispanic women at that point. By 2021, it's racialized. By which I mean that white women and white men are earning in the 20s, and then basically all other groups are in that 15 to 17, 18 zone. So we've moved from deep kind of gender inequality to a much deeper racial inequality across the last 40 years in the state. Another thing, and this is kind of hard to see, this is just to suggest there's data on the web for you, as if you didn't know. But this chart, one of the things I really focus on in this chart is thinking about how the state of Wisconsin, through its technical college system, has delivered for working class people. If you finish a degree at the tech college, you hit the median wage in the economy. If you do some college but don't finish your degree, this is, this is this piece of data that all the parents out there who have a kid who's maybe like having a little bit of a slippery semester, you want to be like holding this little piece of paper. Finish the degree. Finish the degree, please. Anyway, but an associate degree matters so much more than a couple years on any old campus. It really, completing the degrees matters. And it's a real strength of Wisconsin. We have among the highest shares of our workforce that hits the labor market straight out of the tech college system. So that I did. I think I need to jump ahead a little bit. So the two themes I wanted to talk about are the structure of low-wage jobs, and why that's such a problem. I think the points that many people made up here about the fact that diversity and inclusion creates opportunity, creates dynamism that's required to have a thriving region. And I think about the structure of our lowest wage jobs, and I'm thinking about the hands-on healthcare givers in nursing homes and home health agencies. And I'm thinking about childcare workers, and I'm thinking about restaurant servers and food prep workers and people all along the food chain back into the fields, straight through processing and onto our plates in restaurants and grocery stores. I'm thinking about retail workers. These workers hold jobs that pay very low wages, sort of, now less low than they used to be. I used to be able to say 11, 12. Now I would say 15, 16 is where the bottom is, except for those care workers who are still at 11 and 12, because we have serious challenges about how to pay those workers when parents have such high expenses. So, but these low-wage jobs kind of come in bad packages. The hours tend to be uneven and unpredictable. And it's very hard to transition to better jobs because there's so much stress in those jobs. And it's a pretty substantial share of jobs overall. I think many people think, I did that for a while and now I don't, and that's everybody's experience of this sector, but that is not true. I think people who get to listen to me tend to have done a bad job. I sometimes ask you to imagine your worst job, and I hope it's not the one you have now. And then you think about how you got out of that. But I think a lot of workers, this is their career. And we have structured it in a way that folks don't have health insurance, folks don't have access to paid time off, folks can't solve the scheduling problems of childcare and transportation, schools, managing family life balance. They're very hard jobs, and I just want to call some attention to that. But so now I want to flip to, so those are kind of like, I think of as the challenges facing the Wisconsin economy, and these are not going away, but it is, I think, the workers that are making the workers' kind of individual and collective demands for better work that's changing that sector. I wanted to just look a little bit forward. Is a recession coming? The faces of Jerome Powell and Joe Biden perhaps make you think about this or just make you feel sad. But as everybody in the room knows, the Federal Reserve Board is literally, right, raising rates in order to cool down the economy, which is like saying move towards a recession, but not try and get into one, right? So we are literally cooling down the economy because people are concerned about inflation. Inflation has a lot of sources. I think it's interesting for the geeks in the room to go read about both the international forces, but also the monopolistic and the price-driven, the producer-driven versions of inflation that are going on. And of course, we keep watching regional banks being the last regional bank that will fall. So all that's, a little worrisome. But we continue to get strong jobs reports. Each month, the prediction, this one's gonna be way worse, and then it comes out okay. Continued economic resilience, and really important and enormous federal investment coming down in infrastructure, the CHIPS bill, and especially, I think, the Inflation Reduction Act, which has so much about electrification and climate change that will change. These are enormous changes coming, enormous investments. And I think those are part of the resilience and balance we see here. So that's me. I don't know, go ask a real economist, just kidding. Or I don't know, you ask a real economist and they'll explain why both things are possible. Anyway, so I don't, obviously is a recession coming? We're trying to have a soft one, right? So we'll see. And there's real concerns about inflation. But I think this region, whatever comes, there's a few things we know about this region that are important. One is that the labor shortage in the state of Wisconsin is both cyclical and demographic. That is, that we are going to have tight labor markets because we have an aging population, especially in rural areas. The share of the workforce that is prime working age is in decline. The number of prime age workers in many counties, especially rural counties across this state, is falling. And that means employers are chasing fewer and fewer workers. And that is an underlying reality of this state, that with or without a COVID tight labor market, this state is going to be looking for workers. And that means all the employers in the room are going to be thinking about how to get more out of the workers you do have. Your strategies are going to be more centrally about productivity and developing the workers you do have than in other states that have more immigrants, that have a younger workforce, that have more people coming into the labor market. So that's the first thing. This is always true. And then also right now, and I think for the foreseeable future, this region really is the state's economic and population growth engine. And I think this is likely to be true, right? And we will get to see that in, how legislative seats get apportioned in the future and all that, right? A lot of growth is happening here. We have that's getting driven out of the Madison region, and attending to that growth is critical, as many people pointed out, for this region, but also for the state. And Dane County, just if you know this, we always run way below the state unemployment rate. We've been, is it 1.6 now? It's a level that an economist would tell you is actually literally impossible, or there are people who are working who shouldn't be working or something. 1.6 is so low that it's almost unspeakable. But that's what Madison's at right now. Dane County is at right now. And this has just been historically true because of that dynamism. I need to get off, so think about job quality and structures, and think about racial equity. There's some opportunity coming there. Sorry, just going to run through that. But these are the three things I want to leave with you. Remember to love this labor shortage. I know it's hard, but remember that it is doing things to close equity gaps that we have not seen done in a long time. And so that's number one. This is good news, this tight labor market. Tech college degrees pay off, especially focus on success and access for Black and brown students. That will make a difference. And continue focusing, this region must and will, I know with all of you, continue focusing on reducing racial inequality. Thank you so much. Thank you for geeking out with me, and I hope you have a great summer.
Thank you, Dr. Dresser. Fabulous report. As you was talking, I was sitting there thinking, I should tell my wife that. There are people who are working that shouldn't be working. I probably wouldn't be here tomorrow, but we'll see how that goes. Thank you, Dr. Dresser. I really appreciate your insights into our economy and its workforce. And now I'm pleased to introduce to you the board member, MadREP board member, a person I call friend and confidant who's given me countless counsel, the 58th mayor of Madison, Mayor Satya Rose Conway. Since her election in 2019, she has served on the MadREP board, and we are looking forward to partnering with her and her team on child care initiatives in her second term. Mayor.
Good morning, everyone. Wasn't that a fabulous, geeky talk? I'm biased. I worked with Laura Dresser for over a decade, and I think she's just fantastic and smart and always has a great perspective on the economy and particularly our workforce. And I actually didn't know that Laura was speaking before me while I was writing my talking points, but it turns out we're thinking about the same things, which is perhaps not surprising. I want to start by thanking you all for being here today. And I particularly want to thank the Urban League and MadREP for continuing to organize this event year after year for our community. It's a great place to be, and I know a lot of great conversations happen. And I want to start by recognizing that there are forces across the country, and most disturbingly right here in Wisconsin, that are attacking the very idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion, wanting folks who work in DEI to get fired, right? Wanting this work to be defunded. And talk about reframing defunding, how about? And so it makes it even more important that we come together to understand and talk about how diversity strengthens our economy and how equity opens economic opportunities and how inclusion helps to lift everyone in the Madison region. Some of you may know that I am just starting my second term as mayor of Madison, and I am taking time to speak with leaders and community members to hear their visions, hopes, and to dig deeper into some of the gaps that need attention in our community. And here's where Dr. Dresser and I come to the same point. You saw the shift from an economy that represents a deep gender inequity to one that represents deep racial inequities in her slides. And what I'm hearing as I meet with folks, I hear about women, too often women of color, who are left out of the workforce by the lack of affordable childcare. I hear about young black men that no one will hire. I hear about families that aren't making enough to afford good housing. I hear about Latinx business owners who face language barriers, but also discrimination. And I hear about black women who are facing health impacts from the stress of being the sole income earner for their families. I hear about low-wage workers, too often workers of color, whose employers cheat them out of their paychecks. And I share these stories to remind us all of the deep systemic work that needs to be done across all industries to make sure that the economic growth that this region experiences and, yes, drives for the entire state of Wisconsin benefits everyone in our community. I share these stories to remind us all of the true costs of economic insecurity. And my hope is, with the pandemic, at least in theory, behind us, that we can dig deeper, that we can continue to work on the policy and the structural changes that will allow economic opportunity and prosperity for everyone, but particularly the folks on the low end of the wage market, and particularly the folks that are most marginalized in our community. Now, I recognize that the sphere of influence for local government is not limitless, despite what I might want, and that there are things that the city is not able to do. And so I want to take this opportunity to encourage all of us as individuals making economic choices, other levels of government, the state, companies, stakeholders, businesses, and not-for-profits to all identify how we can play a role and we can make our region move towards a more equitable economy. I hope that today offers you tools and insights to identify what your role in building that more equitable economy is. And perhaps more importantly, I hope that today offers you opportunities to expand your thinking about what your role might be. Because it will take all of us to make sure that the benefits of economic growth reach everyone in our community. And it is essential that those benefits are equitably shared with everyone in the Madison region if we are going to continue to be successful and to grow our economy. So I hope you learn a lot today. I hope you have great conversations, and I hope that you will hold this idea of economic equity in your mind and in your heart throughout today and throughout your work going on into the future. Thank you.
I seriously feel like I'm getting my steps in today. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And now it's with lots of gratitude that I'd like to bring to the stage Amy Davis, who is here representing our co-presenting sponsor, Alliant Energy. Alliant has been a huge supporter of this event since its inception 10 years ago. I'd also like to take a moment to personally thank Alliant Energy for their partnership with MadREP in my first 2 years with the organization. In addition to leading Alliant Energy in Wisconsin, David DeLeon, who I often see at, where do we see? To Whole Foods? Is that where we see? Whole Foods shopping, eating healthy. His insight and guidance has been invaluable to our growth, and as part of the executive committee, he's always given me great counsel. So thank you, David and Alliant Energy. Now, please join me in giving Alliant Energy and Amy a round of applause.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you all for attending this very energizing event. As was mentioned, I'm Amy Davis. I'm the Vice President of Marketing Communications and Community Engagement at Alliant Energy, and our company is just truly honored to be joining you all today and hope that everyone is inspired by the breakout sessions and the speakers that we have lined up for you. The relationship we have with the Madison Region Economic Partnership is a close one, and as was mentioned, David DeLeon, my friend and colleague, sits on the executive committee for the board of directors. We're proud to have a member of our own team serving in this important community volunteer role. I point this out because many of you in the room are likely familiar with the energy products and services like natural gas and electricity to homes and businesses that our company provides. However, we also work deeply with community partners in Wisconsin and Iowa to advance economic development opportunities for our region, including those in the 8 counties that are represented by MadREP. It's important for us to have a seat at the table like David does with MadREP because it informs the work that we do in economic development. It provides stronger bonds for collaboration, and it helps us learn about what's going on in our region. We appreciate this strong relationship not only with MadREP, but the Urban League of Greater Madison as well, because success is reliant economic development success is reliant on a very strong workforce. And diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts are a big part of our collective ability to retain and recruit a workforce to our communities. And this is true for our company too. We work to create a workplace where people feel like they belong and they can use their unique backgrounds, talents, and gifts to their fullest potential. It's really all centered on our care for others value, and the focus continues to be a cornerstone of our company and our purpose of serving customers and building stronger communities. It's one of the many reasons we're proud to be, again, the presenting sponsor of this summit. The opportunity for growth and education and motivation that comes from this event, it aligns with our company values and our purpose. But this morning, I have the greatest honor to introduce the next keynote speaker. Mr. Jason Thompson is a successful author, speaker, and well-respected thought leader in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Jason has developed, consulted, trained, and led award-winning diversity programs in multiple industries, including the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee, CES, SHRM, and Meta. He has been quoted by multiple national news organizations, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, The Guardian, and countless others. He was also awarded the inaugural DE&I Legacy Award from the Denver Business Journal, and he is well known for his practical and outcome-based approach to DE&I. His book, Diversity and Inclusion Matters, Tactics and Tools to Inspire Equity and Game-Changing Performance, is a handbook for DE&I professionals, CEOs, and HR executives that provides a clear blueprint and tools for successful outcomes, or in other words, the receipts. Jason is the co-founder of Cape Inclusion, a minority-owned DE&I software solutions company that was founded on the Cape Method. I know we all look forward to learning more from him now, so thank you for taking the time to be with us today, and please join me in welcoming Jason Thompson.
Good morning. Again, I'm Jason Thompson, and as was said, everything I do is super practical to the point of I'm simple-minded. But hopefully, the question we can answer today is, I've been doing diversity for about 30 years, and people typically say to me, I know diversity is important, Jason, but what do you want me to do? At the end of the day, when I get back to my desk, what am I supposed to do? And so hopefully today we're going to answer some of that. I don't know if we can put my slides up here on the screen. There we go. So what works? Hopefully that's what happens. But I want to start with a simple question. Anybody maybe just blurt out, how long does it take to walk from the back of the bus to the front? Anybody? How long does it take to walk from the back of the bus to the front? 30 seconds, maybe? 10 seconds? Okay, great. It actually takes 381 days, right? If you think of it, this is an iconic photo of Rosa Parks, all right? And I would say many times when we think of diversity, we think of Rosa Parks as a moment in time. And we're going to talk a lot about that today because it's important. But in order to execute on a diversity program, you got to have a system. And that's what they did. They coordinated a system. Not only are we not going to get on the bus, but we know you got to go to work. So we have to have a carpool. And they just started coming up with a system. And that's really what I think in many cases the gap in diversity is we don't have a system. So many times people know it's important, but they don't know what to do. And the reason this worked is because everyone knew what to do, what was expected of them. So big idea is take practical steps. It's a simple point, but it's one that we have to start breaking down, I think, when it comes to the context of diversity. So this, to me, is really important. What could your company achieve if every single person knew what was expected of them in the context of diversity? And I would suggest this is one of our biggest challenges. People don't know what's expected of them. Therefore, it's hard to execute, right? We go to the session, we leave, we know it's important, but I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do when I get back to my desk. That's what we're going to talk about today. So here are the goals. Number one, why programs fail and why one-time trainings don't work. I don't do one-time trainings, and we'll talk about that. I get a lot of heat about that, but I don't do one-time. I don't do mandatory trainings. We'll talk about that, why I don't do it. Understand the data that makes a difference. A lot of times people do diversity data, they don't know how to use it. We'll talk about that. And then what should we do then? If these things are true, Jason, what should we do? And hopefully I can answer some of those questions today. But I know this happened. As soon as they say, oh, the diversity guy's coming up, you probably pulled out your phone right away and thought, oh, I got a meeting. I got something to think about here. And so I'm not going to fight that. I just want to go with it. So pull your phone out. If you have it with you, we're going to play a little game, and it requires you to use your phone. We'll see if this still works. So what you need to do is literally go to Google. Go to google.com. This is not an endorsement of Google, but I just need you to go to google.com. You're going to type in the search vice president, and then click on images. So go to google.com. In the search, type vice president, and then click on images. And just out of curiosity, what do you see? Anybody want to blurt out if you've done it that quickly? Okay, Vice President Harris, excellent. So that works. Let's see if this works. Now, I want you to do the same thing, but go to Yahoo. Now, I'm told nobody uses Yahoo, at least not since 1996, but humor me. Is anybody from Yahoo here? So I apologize if I said that to you. I apologize. But go to yahoo.com and then do the same thing. Type in Vice President and click on Images. So Yahoo. So I see someone said, oh, so maybe you saw this already. Images, and just out of curiosity, what are you seeing? Anybody? Mike, a lot of people get Mike Pence. Yeah, I've been doing this for like 4 years. It happens every time, right? And the point isn't a political statement, but it's that our diversity work has to be intentional. It is not random. You're not going to get outcomes just out of luck. We need to be intentional. And so this is what I got too. When I go to Google, you get Vice President Harris, and then if you go to Yahoo, you get Pence. Two totally different images. And if you think about it, I did not say Vice President of the United States. I just said Vice President. And all of a sudden, it starts filling in all this information for you that you don't even have to think about. So I would suggest some of our biases are actually created for us. Depending on what kind of search engine you use, it starts dictating things to you. And we had always assumed that sometimes that actually the internet reinforces our current beliefs. I would suggest in some cases it's actually creating them. It's creating some of our biases. And whatever's written in this algorithm is producing this, because this is not by accident. Because if I never said Vice President of the United States, how did it know? It continues to work all the time when I do this. I've done it in tons of settings for 3 straight years, and I still get the same outcome. It says something about what's written in the code. It wasn't by accident. So our diversity work has to be intentional. And in fact, sometimes people say, well, I got half Pence, half Harris. And my response is still, it doesn't make sense. It's not sensical. Something else is going on here. And if you do the same thing with president, you get a similar outcome. All of these are not by accident. And so that's why I bring up this photo here. Jackie Robinson, integrated baseball. Now I would say this is probably one of our first diversity programs. For anybody who's a baseball fan, Jackie Robinson was the first African-American to play Major League Baseball, right? That happened in 1947. And so I always tell people, successful diversity programs have to be intentional, and you have to track your data. Why do I say that? Because this data right here. If any of you are a baseball fan and you watched the World Series this year, there wasn't one US-born African-American on either team. Not one. So their data went from basically 0. They peaked in the 78 and 80s around, 20, 30%. And now it's as low as 6 or 7% of their players. So your diversity work has to be intentional. It's not enough to say we opened the door. It's like, what are you doing after that point? And this is a good example of how our diversity work is still important. The mayor said this, it's not by accident. If we're not intentional, you're not gonna have outcomes. And you're gonna see this kind of outcome. Like, what happened? How's this even possible? Right? This is one of probably the most iconic moments in US history when it comes to sports. And look where we are today. We have to be intentional. It's not gonna happen because of accidents. Now, for today, humor me, disagree, but I'm gonna give you some quick definitions of diversity so we can at least be on the same page. And this is a process that people typically don't do. A lot of times, and I've worked with companies before, as you know, I do consulting, and a lot of times what happens is everybody knows diversity is important, but they haven't even defined it. So if you haven't defined it, how are you supposed to get there? And so in this case, I always say on a very simple level, diversity is what we look like and who we are. I always get pushback on that. People tell me, well, certain forms of diversity are invisible. And I'm like, you're correct. So these are theoretical questions that hopefully get in a meeting and you think, well, who are we, right? What do we look like? And start thinking about that theoretically. I've noticed that people who are from the LGBTQ community never speak up. That says something about who we are, right? That's why diversity is important. It's what we look like, who we are. Or we make no accommodations for people who have disabilities. That's what I mean. The next piece is the equity. Those accommodations are the equity piece, right? How we treat each other. And then the last thing is if we do those two things well, we have inclusion. That people will speak up and they'll say, you know what, I have a different opinion, but I'm not afraid to tell you because I don't want to worry about, am I going to have a job tomorrow, all right? When people are afraid they don't have a job, like I always say whenever I do consulting, and I go into a company and will ask questions and no one speaks up, they don't have inclusion because people are afraid for their jobs. They're concerned that if I speak up, I won't have a job here. So they don't have equity. They don't have inclusion. They can't get there until they fix those two things, right? So the last thought here is that the other thing I'm also the Vice President for Diversity at Western Governors University. And as I mentioned, there has to be a connection between why are we doing diversity work and what does the organization do? And so I literally sat down with the vision statement for the organization and the mission statement. And the vision statement is basically, Western Governors wants to be the most student-centric university. So I said, in the context of diversity, that means we are endeavoring to be the world's most inclusive university, because you can't be student-centric if you're not inclusive. That means on the first day, if a person says, Jason, why are we doing diversity? I can say, well, it's directly connected to our vision, which is to be student-centric. We are endeavoring to be the world's most inclusive. The key word here is endeavoring. We are not the world's most inclusive university. We know that for a fact, but we're willing to commit to the work. That's the endeavoring piece. And so when I created that vision, that's why, because I want to be able to say to people, the first day you're on the job, if you don't understand why, I can tell you why, because we're endeavoring to be the world's most inclusive, which is directly connected to our vision statement of being student-centric. Hopefully you can now see how we're going to do this. And the commitment we have to make is to the endeavoring piece, the work. And so my task is, how do I define that for people? How do I help them understand that? How do we get there? So there's one of the things I came up with, CAPE technique in the book. You'll see, not that I'm trying to sell you the book, but it just gives you how I came up with this. Because I'm often asked to consult with people. And recently I met with a company and they said to me, Jason, you know what? They had a diversity council when I got here. And so they hired this person to be the new vice president for their diversity initiatives. And she said, when I got here, they had this diversity plan. And so we started working on recruitment because they already decided to do that. And I said, how do you know if you have a recruitment problem? And she said, I don't know, I guess I hadn't thought of that. And I was like, that's why you have to start by collecting the data. Because what we had is, this is a very visible company. I'm from Denver, very visible company in Denver. And people were applying for the jobs. They did have a diverse group of people applying for the jobs. They weren't being hired. Those are two different processes. HR does the recruitment, managers and leaders do the hiring. So if you keep all your energy on recruitment, you'll always have failure, and that's why, because you have the wrong solution. You haven't defined the problem. And so that simple task of collecting the data helps people realize, actually, we don't have a recruitment problem. We have selection bias. Therefore, when you do unconscious bias training, people know why they're in the room. It's because you've gone 3 years, you never hired a woman. The light comes on for the manager. Oh, I get it. And I know what I'm being held accountable to. So it's a simple process. If you collect the data, you analyze it, and then you build your plan, then you execute. What I find is most people start with the plan. As a result, they get more frustrated because the plan doesn't work, because it's based on assumptions that we know about diversity, rather than what data do we have that's actually driving this work. So I guess, too, I missed the slide here somehow. I don't know. I guess I'm supposed to go to the slide where I tell you how amazing I am. I don't know that I covered that slide, did I? I don't know what happened here. So just real quickly, I guess I should give a little background. I've been in diversity like 30 years. You know, they said in the introduction, and I wrote a book, as they mentioned. And I wanted to talk about the book because there's kind of a funny aside to it. I'm dyslexic, actually. So it was very difficult to write the book. And we go back and forth. I negotiate with this book company. And then at one point they said, well, what do you want on the cover of the book? It never dawned on me. I guess, I don't know. I've never written a book before, but I have to come up with something to put on the cover of the book. So they said, and I said, I don't know. I don't honestly know what to put on the cover of the book. And they said, well, go to the bookstore. And if you see some books you like, just take a picture of it and then send it to us. And then we have artists, we'll figure it out for you. I said, great. And so on the way out of the door to the bookstore, I look up on the wall and we have this photo. And it's a picture, it's like an art piece of art. I take a picture of that. And somehow I included that picture in with the covers of these books. And so then they see that picture and they're like, wow, that's incredible. Who's the artist? Like this photo, where'd you get this from? And so I was like, they said, can you get approval for this? And I was like, yeah, I can actually. Because it was my son's 4th grade art project. He won the Douglas County art project. Yeah, it pays. Art is good. And yeah, so I think that somewhere in this presentation you might be able to see a cover of the book. So you know that, yes, my son actually had to sign a release and give permission. So he's actually on the book. You'll see inside the cover, with permission from, and Justice signed it. My son's now like 27, but he was literally a 4th grader and won the art competition. So my son and I are both dyslexic, so you can imagine this was huge for both of us to have him be a part of it. And when they actually sent the book to our house, he read out loud to me, which was huge, because that's really hard when you're dyslexic to read out loud. But there is a connection here because I still had to learn how to read, obviously. I'm not a very good reader, but I had to learn different skills. But what it taught me was that there's different forms of dyslexia. Like a lot of times people think, oh, you just reverse letters. And it's actually a whole spectrum. And for me, I can't actually recognize words. For my son, he has double vision. So we have different forms of it. And so I didn't know I had it until I was like 50-something. And my son, he went all through school, and I assumed he had dyslexia, but I didn't know I had it too because I didn't know how it worked. And so you can imagine you go all the way through high school, and then I listened to NPR, and then I realized, oh, the fact that I can't recognize words is a form of dyslexia. And so there's a connection here because I realized, even to this day, I misspell my name. Every time I type it in an email, it's literally misspelled. But what helps me is the fact that, like Outlook or whatever you use will automatically put a red line, and that flags me right away that I know I can change it. So it's important about adaptation, can help a person very simply. But the fact that I had to learn that helped me in diversity because I realized everyone knows diversity is important, but they don't know what to do. I knew I needed how to read, but I didn't know how to get there. And so this data and this table I created actually helped me understand, and it actually was the skill to help me figure out if people know diversity is important, they know how to get there, there's some data, there's something missing. And so this table I created when I worked at the U.S. Olympic Committee, I realized that diversity is the outcome of managing levers, right? And so if you manage who gets hired, who gets terminated, who gets promoted, the outcome would be diversity. Think about that. Who gets hired, who gets promoted, and how long they stay. When I say termination, it means voluntary, involuntary. When you begin managing those, the outcome will be diversity, right? And a lot of times people think, oh, diversity is a goal, and they'll set a goal. I had this conversation recently, and I had it years ago as well. Someone came to me, my manager, years ago, and said, hey, Jason, we should be 30% diverse in 3 years. It's mathematically impossible. How did I know that? Because it's based on turnover. And if people don't leave, you can't actually become more diverse. That's how it happens. And so a lot of times what happens is people don't understand how that works. And as a result, they'll say, you know what, our leadership team should be more diverse. They're right, it should be. But you won't get there in 1 year unless someone leaves. Technically, no one wants a lot of turnover on their leadership team. Because if you have a lot of turnover in your leadership team, something is broken. It's usually not a good sign. And so the CEO, the vice presidents, the directors, they're all tasked with keeping good people. If they're good at keeping good people, you can't become more diverse, right? We reward them for low turnover. So if you don't understand those levers, you'll always be frustrated with your goals, and you'll set goals you can't achieve. Now the point is not we shouldn't be more diverse. The point is, what are the tools to get there? What are we managing to get there? And that's usually the biggest miss. And that's why I said I'm very practical. I realize, what are the levers? There are levers. Who's getting hired? And it could be, in some cases, no one got hired. It also, and here you'll see, we use market availability. So the other thing I realized is, a lot of times people will set a goal. Women should be at 50%. Of course they should, because women make up 50% of the world. But they may not make up 50% of engineers. It may be 38%. And so if you're at 14%, you should put that in context to 38, not 50, because the goal is not achievable. And you might say, you know what? Because of this, we've realigned our diversity work to do more things around thought leadership and get more women into this industry. Because if you don't do that, you're always going to be frustrated because you won't be able to find enough women, and you're trying to get to 50%. You've set a goal you can't achieve. Again, that's why the data is so important. Not only do you know how diverse you are, you need to know what is the market and compare yourself to the market. And that's actually what this table does. And the other thing, too, is if you say, okay, Jason, I'm willing to accept our leadership team hasn't got more diverse, but we should still see promotions, right? That's the other piece. It's not to say stop doing the work. It's like, how do we realign our work to say, and I would say this is the major reason we continue to see a pay gap. Because what we've done is we address what happens at one moment. We've narrowed it by saying, when we hire you, we'll try to make sure that that window's closed, right? Everyone's hired relatively same. But when we do our annual reviews, and we've seen data to show this, women and people of color are rated much more harshly. So what one person will get a 4%, and disproportionately women and minorities get like a 3%. That gap is what we're seeing. That's why it's so stubborn. It's because we haven't dealt with the inclusion piece of it. How is a person treated? Do we look at the data, how a person is, the probability of them being promoted? Typically, that's where we see a lot of challenges. And as a result, that what 4% and 5% really starts to add up over a span of a career. And I would suggest we have to start dealing with what is the systemic issue going on here? That this one point in time is not the fix. We actually have to deal with the systemic issue. And how people are treated every day typically is one of the problems. So you probably know who this is. You'll probably see I'm a sports fan, right? Okay. So I would assume a lot of us know Kaepernick. I always say his name wrong. We know his story, or at least he took a knee, right? In the NFL, he wanted to raise awareness around social injustice, around police brutality. And this is the reason I changed how we do diversity. Because I could tell the way people responded to this, that something else was going on. That people were literally saying, what is he doing? Why is he taking a knee? We've had a black president. This can't be a problem, right? And I think a lot of people thought, well, I've been to diversity training. How can this be a problem? Because they don't see it as a system. They saw it as a moment in time, right? So, for example, this is an iconic photo that a lot of us know. This is Ruby Bridges. She integrated a school as a 5-year-old. This is an iconic moment. Does anyone know how many days she had to have armed guards help her into the school? Any guesses? How many days did they have to have armed guards to get Ruby Bridges into that school? Basically a 5-year-old. Any guesses? The entire year. And this is important to know. So think of this for a moment. I always think of her parents. Can you imagine having a 5-year-old and you say, I kiss you on your head and I give you to 3 guards and hope you come home? They were so aggressive towards her that she did not even get to the classroom on day 1. They were so afraid for her. The guards told her, don't look left or right, just look straight ahead. So you notice in every photo that she's looking straight ahead. And the reason she is because they were afraid for her, that she would become panicked and she would run. And so they wanted her to stay with them, and that's what they did. She couldn't eat lunch because people were threatening to poison the food, so she had to bring her own food. Halfway through the year, she stops eating altogether and starts having nightmares. Yet her parents got up every day and took whatever they had left of that child and sent her back to school because they knew what was at risk here, that there was something much larger, much bigger. And I don't often tell that story. I often think of her parents and think, how do you find the strength to do that? I would have not subjected my 5-year-old to that. I'm glad they did because I got to go to school. It created an educational opportunity for me. They were able to see where this was going and they made a change. So we don't always tell that. We always see it as a moment. And so most people think, well, the moment's over. Shouldn't we be fine? And it's not. It's not over. But think about this too. Would you get up every day for a year just to yell at a 5-year-old? People did that. As a result, a one-time 45-minute training is not going to change that attitude because it's not sensical. The challenge with diversity is that a lot of times people think it's sensical. Oh, they're doing something that's racist. If you tell them to stop, they'll just stop because this is nonsensical. It's not how it works. How do you get up every day to yell at a 5-year-old? Like, that is deeply ingrained. It's going to take a little while for a person to get over that, right? To have that kind of conversation. And they didn't choose her by accident. They chose her thinking, she's just a 5-year-old girl. They'll have compassion and mercy. They could not. They could not humanize her. So as a result, every day, this is what they did. And I can't imagine as a parent, can you imagine you kiss your child and hope they come home every day? You subject them literally to violence every day? But they did. So it's important that we tell that full story. And, one of the things, we're having conversations now, obviously, on a lot of political levels. And one of the challenges is saying, well, this might make some kids uncomfortable. And the point is, of course, this is called compassion. We should teach people compassion. That's how we prevent this from happening again. It's completely normal that this should make you uncomfortable. And understanding that helps us communicate why diversity is important, that people see a history and a system. Because if you can see that, you won't be surprised by this slide here. I started my career in 1991 with Rodney King, literally a police beating of an African American. Then you see 2020 George Floyd, the exact same thing. We saw 1991 as a moment and we trained on it as a moment in time. If we just teach you that's not good, you'll change your behavior. Pulse nightclub, 2016. Club Q, same exact thing, 2022. I literally live 45 minutes from Club Q, right? The reason this continues to happen is because we've not taught it as a system of events. Racism is complicated, homophobia is complicated, and if we don't start teaching it in a complicated way, people will continue to use the same behaviors. They'll just go back to whatever they were doing before. And they'll think, oh, I did the one-time training. I'm doing something different. I'm not really discriminating. I'm doing something different. They don't see the connection. Think about our hiring process. And I mentioned this, right? I hire you and I ask you, how much do you want to be paid? Well, women and people of color historically paid less. So if you say $45,000, I go, well, that's what they asked for. That seemed fair, right? But the job actually pays $52,000. That you start creating this gap. And you don't realize individually, even though I have not actively engaged in racism or discrimination, I've actually contributed to it. That actually you should pay people not on what they got before, but paid on what does the job pay right now. But that simple process of not understanding how I'm contributing to forms of historical racism and discrimination means I perpetuate it. That's the practical thing we don't tell people. Like, actually, when you do that, and we know women have always been paid less, you actually perpetuate it. But we don't teach that concept of how this is a systemic issue, right? So that's why it's so important for people to understand the history. So what did I do differently? How are we doing our diversity programs differently now? Why don't I do mandatory training? Because what we want is organizational change. If you think about a good diversity program, what it does is create organizational change. So then I looked at what are organizational change models? One is ADKAR. I'm no expert on ADKAR, but I realized if we can communicate that diversity is important, we shouldn't have to force you into the meeting. Like, we don't have mandatory meetings around do the mission. We just assume you're here, you understand this is the mission, and you have aligned to it, that's why you took the job. Diversity is the same concept. You're here, we committed to it, you should align yourself to it. Therefore, if people understand that, hey, this is what it takes to understand and work here, I know when I'm being held accountable, who gets promoted, who gets terminated, how long they stay, I realize these things are important. That awareness connection will therefore hopefully give you the desire to attend our sessions. So what we do at WGU is we just have sessions all the time. They're voluntary. You don't have to, we don't force you to show up. But when you do show up, we tell you what's expected of you, how this works, and we realize we create a place for you to practice the concepts. Because many times what happens is I get a concept, I never get a chance to practice. Systemic racism, systemic sexism. This is big concepts. Privilege. We talk about this all the time. Privilege. People are like, okay, general, I get it. Or they say, you know what, I hear privilege, but what does it mean? What does it mean to me? I am white, middle class, my parents worked hard, I work hard, I don't have privilege, Jason. I hear this all the time. And my response is, well, I never call ahead. And people say, what are you talking about? I just told you. I'm white, middle class, I work hard, I don't have privilege. And I say, yeah, I never call ahead. What does that mean? Well, people assume I'm able-bodied, so I never call ahead. Think of the stage. There's no ramp. No one asked me, they just assumed I get on the stage. The world's built for people who are able-bodied. Right? Think about that. Even just simple things we do. You almost couldn't even negotiate this room if you were in a wheelchair right now. Thank you for inviting me. I'm not putting you down, so let's be clear about that. But that's how privilege works. It's a form of privilege I have as an able-bodied person. I never think about my personal safety. My goal is to grow up and be a mechanic. I love cars. And so I have this old junky Jeep that I've been working on. If you open the door and get in, lights don't come on. My spouse is completely freaked out by that. You get in a car with no lights? I'm like, yeah, no big deal. Why? Because one of the privileges I have as a male is my personal safety. I never have to think about it. My daughter told me, yeah, I walk like a man to protect myself. I was like, what are you talking about? She said, well, think about it. Men can walk slow because they're not going anywhere and it doesn't matter. No one's going to attack them. So if I act that way, I'm less apt to be attacked. And I thought, think about that. I can walk down the same street with my own child and we have two different experiences. That's privilege. That's what privilege looks like. As a male, I never think about my personal safety, where I park the car, right? So it's important to think about and understand privilege and give people a chance to go, oh, hadn't thought about that before. How do I practice this concept? And so our diversity is structured more so we create spaces where we give you a concept and you can practice it. Oh, I understand microaggression now, or I understand privilege. I understand bias, right? And sometimes I don't get it. That's why we should have a space where we go, okay, once a month, I spend 10 or 15 minutes with it. Because I'll be honest with you, I currently cannot do my own travel. Why? Because I got one-time training, right? You go back and they go, oh, you got to submit your travel, and you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to work, you know. I'm like, I don't know how this works. Why? Because I get a one-time training, and I haven't traveled for 6 months, and I sit down again, and you're like, oh, man. But if I guarantee you, if I did it 15 minutes every month, guess what? I would know how to do it. That's how we learn complicated concepts, right? You show up for calculus on day one, right? First day of calculus, it seems like everyone knows calculus except for me. I'm afraid to even speak up. But then you keep coming back every day. That uncomfortableness starts going away because I use the concepts. That's where diversity has been broken. We don't give people a chance to practice the concepts, all right? So that's how we put the I in allyship, is that you have to own it. That each of us have to commit to, okay, how can I learn the concepts? How do I spend time understanding the concepts? How do I apply them? So the best way to be an ally is to own your behavior. Each of us have to own our own behavior. And that should be the expectation. I don't have to force you into a one-time training, but you got to own your behavior and understand how diversity is directly aligned with the mission and vision of this organization. That's how we're going to get there, right? And then this is the other thing I always say to people, don't ask me to organize a David's, right? And you're probably thinking, what does that mean? Well, I actually have an initiative that I want to, if you could participate in this initiative, I would welcome your support. Now, I don't know if you know this, but like some people go by David and some people go by Dave. And so you see here like David Letterman, David Beckham, and then it's like Dave Chappelle. It's super complicated. Like, how am I supposed to know who's Dave and who's David? Like, so, I don't know. So what I'm going to do, and I want you to help me with this, is I'm trying to organize a national convention of all the Dave and Davids, and we want them all to come together. So if you know a Dave or David, all I ask is that I'll send you an email, you forward it to them, they'll sign up, and they'll come to the convention. Dave and Davids. And then we're going to make a decision. You can't be both. You got to be Dave or David. You can't be one or the other. You have to make a commitment here. It's so complicated for me. Why is it so complicated for me? This is unfair to me. You got to figure this out, right? Now, of course, you know I'm not doing that. But you also hope you can understand, this is what we ask people of color all the time. Which are you? Are you African American or black? I need to know. It's so complicated. Are you Latino, Latinx? Which one is it? Are you disabled or a person with disability? Which one? Right? Are you neurodiverse? I need to know. Well, you know what? You go through all day and you know who Dave and David is. You just somehow figure it out. It's the same exact concept. I don't know why some people like African American, some people like black. I can't answer it for you. Life is complicated, but somehow you negotiate your Daves from your Davids, right? Everyone knows, oh, that's Susie. Don't call her Sue. We all know that, right? Don't make that mistake, right? We know her, right? Think about that. But somehow you figure that out. We help each other with it. We give each other enough grace to go, oh, just so you know, today's the first day. Don't call her Susie, okay? Just know, that's a button for her. We figure it out. Guess what? Black people, Latinos, people, this same idea. Is it LGBTQIA? It's so complicated. Don't ask me to organize the Davids. This one's on you, right? That's how you commit to diversity. And then, here's another just thought, like I say, the practical tool I think people need to have is we got to hire for potential. And this is important because usually what we do is go, oh, have you had the job before? And generally, if we know women and people of color hadn't had these jobs, if that's always the criteria, they're never going to be hired. You've got to hire based on potential. And realize many times in our job descriptions, we recreate systemic forms of privilege and sexism. But it will work. You can hire based on potential, and it does work. And I can prove it. I'm a sports fan. You might remember the Super Bowl. What was it, 2021, I believe? These were the two guys that were head coaches. Neither one of them had ever been head coach before, but yet here they are, Super Bowl. Both of them coach a team right to the Super Bowl. And they were hired based on potential. It does work. In the context of diversity, what we say is we have to be intentional and realize people of color and women rarely get that opportunity. We see that in the NFL. Rarely do black coaches get the opportunity, although they're disproportionately represented on the field. So that uncomfortable truth is the conversation that we must have, because it's not going to go away if you just ignore it and hope. Hope is not a solution. All right? We got to do the work and call out this. All right? People can do the work if given the opportunity. And not only do you have to have the opportunity to be successful, I got to be given the grace to fail. Because there's another thing that we also do. When a person of color or woman is given that opportunity, if they fail, the response is, oh, you know, we tried a woman, didn't work, right? No, failure is not connected to gender. If you think about it, white men have been very good at failure. Oh, they've done a lot of it, okay? But we never connect it to whiteness. We have to separate those two things, right? So, and I'm not saying this because I have ill will towards either of these men. I'm like glad they got the opportunity, right? I'm just saying we got to separate that from gender and separate failure from gender, separate failure from race, that both things have to come at the same time. Like we have to create space and realize when, you know, honestly, I don't know, I'll tell you, I apologize, I'm a huge sports fan. And if you are a women's volleyball fan and you watch the NCAA championships, right, the college collegiate championship, Division I women's volleyball, 70% of every athlete is a woman that plays volleyball at the collegiate level. This was the first year that a woman coached a team in the championship game. Can you imagine that? We've been playing, I think it's 40, 50 years of volleyball at Division I, and this is the first time a woman has been able to coach a team. Men outnumber women coaches for women's teams. How's that even possible? I mean, it has to be intent. That's what intent looks like. That's not random. You can't get that kind of randomness. 40 straight years, all athletes are women, and only one time has a woman got to the finals with the team, because women are not afforded the opportunity to be head coach. You have to be intentional and call these things out when we see them. And of course, it was great that she was there, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, this is what systemic sexism looks like. This would be the outcome. This is what it looks like. And we have to have that uncomfortable conversation at the same time. So the last thing I want to leave you with, I can take a question if there are any. Oh, there's the book, so you can see the cover. That's my son's artwork, in case you're wondering what it looks like. There's my son's artwork. I want to leave you with this, and this is, I think, probably the most important thing, if nothing else. I want to thank you for being here, because you being here is super important. Think about this historically. There was a moment in time where African Americans couldn't even eat at the lunch counter. And so people got up and they just went to the lunch counter and they allowed people to beat them, literally. And why did they do that? Because they knew you were coming for them. Think about that for a minute. The only reason they knew they could do that is because good people would come for them. That they knew if other people saw what was going on here, that I will allow them to beat me in this horrific way just because I want lunch, because you will come for them. We did come for them, but we have to continue to do that work. And one of the ways we do that work is by you being here right now. So that's why it's so important. I want to thank you to know that even this gesture makes change, that just showing up and being present and letting the world know, if someone beats you inappropriately in a way that's horrifyingly, we will come for you. This is what we do for each other. This is how we make the world a better place. We show up, and when we see horrible things, we stand against it. So I want to thank all of you for taking the time to show up and be in this space today. Thank you. And,